My name is John Pasfield. I'm going to read from my Babe Ruth novel in a moment. Uh, the title of this video is Babe Ruth Video 1, Standing in the Batter's Box. Here's the cover of the novel, and the title is Out of the Park, The Cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Pasfield. This is a painting on the cover by Prashant Miranda. He's a Toronto artist. And perhaps he has a website. I haven't checked lately. This was done a few years ago, but you could have a look if you like. Let me read from the back cover of the novel, which has a summary of the situation of the story as it's being told. On October 1st, 1932, an aging Babe Ruth stands at the plate in Wrigley Field, Chicago, and grins at the shouts of a raging, hostile crowd. His knees ache, but his focus is still on the ball. He fights off a swarm of thoughts. His first year as a Yankee, his record of 60 home runs, his two wives, his money problems, a million questions about when he's going to hang up his glove. He's looking for his next big hit to prove that he still belongs in the game. The pitcher's eyes are burning. The crowd is a frenzied roar. He raises his arm and points at the center field fence. Well, that's the situation that sets up the whole novel. It's a King Lear moment. King Lear stands on the heath and he's being pelted by the wind and the rain. But he's also being pelted by memories. His experiences come back to him. He's kind of evaluating his life as he stands there under tremendous pressure, does King Lear. And Babe Ruth the same. He stands there at home plate. At the top of his mind, he's concentrating. He's trying to hit the next ball out of the park. But everything comes back to him, all of his experiences. So the task, I think, of every major character in serious literature is to range his mind back over his life, evaluate his experiences, choose some of them as significant imagery, which will help him to understand his life, to interpret his life. And so Babe Ruth is a King Lear figure, an aging fellow with lots of problems, under pressure at the moment, but thinking things over. So that's how I set it up. The structure of the novel then has action. Two of the things I mentioned in that summary are also major cycles. So I picked 1920 as one major cycle, 5 chapters of memories. His first year as a Yankee. Not going so well at first, a lot of publicity about what a phenomenon he was, but struggling as a Yankee. He'd come over from Boston, of course, with a big reputation. But then there's kind of a breakthrough game, and I picked one for 5 chapters. Also in 1927, Lou Gehrig was ahead of him for a good part of that season, but the Babe pulled ahead at the end and hit his 60 home runs. So I picked that as a major cycle of 5 chapters as well. But the outer frame, the memory moment, is 1932, and that's the famous game in Chicago where he points, seems to point. Some say he didn't point at the center field fence. Some say he just held up his finger and said, "Give me one good hit." But others say, no, he pointed, and then he hit the ball exactly to that spot. So that's the structure of the novel. Now, within each chapter, he's always at bat. He spends his life at bat. You and I spend our lives at bat. We're always in the present moment, always under some pressure, more or less, on given days, always thinking about our lives. So every chapter has him at bat. Inside the chapter, though, if you take that action, the action of those at bats, the pitch, the swing, the hit, the run around the bases, and you spread them out, and you get the thoughts about his whole life so far up to that moment, and what it has added up to. So that's the structure of each chapter. In a moment, I'm going to start reading from the novel, and I'm just going to read from the first chapter and show, by doing part of the first chapter as a reading, all the various levels of thought that are going on in the mind of Babe Ruth as he's standing at bat in Wrigley Field, Chicago in 1932. So, chapter 1, Autumn 1, I called it Autumn. Wrigley Field, Chicago, October 1st, 1932. That's all heading for this chapter. Here is the chapter, various levels of thought. The most conscious thought is the first thought. Getting a little older, digging deep down inside, relying on tape and rub downs and liniments to get me through, dragging an old body around and shrugging off all the cat calls, loving the game so much that I forced myself to keep on going, looking for the next big hit to prove that I'm still in the game. Standing in the batter's box, Chicago, Wrigley Field, third game of the World Series. I was in bed nearly dying only 2 weeks ago. 51,000 fans, $211,000 at the gate. Them Cubs is shifting over to right center. Huh, must know more than I know if they know where I'm going to hit. A lemon comes rolling at my feet. The fans are shouting so loud that the noise is just a roar. Don't know why they want to throw them vegetables for. I can hardly hear a word that anybody's shouting. Think I'll step back out of the batter's box and pick it up and toss it back. I've soaked myself in baseball since I was a little kid. I'd play all day and only stop when you couldn't see the ball. I've learned from every player that I've ever come across. On the baseball diamonds, in the dugouts, in the clubhouses, in the restaurants, in the hotel lobbies, and on the trains all over this country. I got baseball in my bones and in my bloodstream. I got every old timer's secrets in my brain. When I first come to New York, I parked my shiny new car and tossed my suit jacket on the fender and played stickball with the kids I saw playing in the street. And then at the very deepest level of his mind, I would say, just fragments. And these fragments all find their way into sentences and paragraphs elsewhere in the novel, which means elsewhere in his mind, in the main character's mind. But at this level, they're just fragments, just words. Screwball, aggressive, strike zone, batting practice, front shoulder, newspaperman, tagging runner, outs per game, ice bag treatment, on base percentage. Then back to sentences at a higher level of his thought. The fans are always shouting. Mostly it's just a roar from a long ways away. Sometimes, though, I swear I can hear every word. Ruth, you stink. Ruth, you're washed up. Ruth, you're the oldest man in baseball. Well, these are coming from outside his mind, but they come into his mind, that they become significant imagery. Should he believe these things that are being said about him? You're too old? Standing there in the batter's box, cogitating on what the next pitch is probably going to be, trying not to be confused by a lot of things that I shouldn't even be thinking about. All I need is one good pitch. I gotta concentrate so I ain't cogitating about all this stuff that keeps bothering me. Just trying to keep the old noggin focused on putting the next one right out of the park. Well, that's the title of the novel. There's more newspaper guys here today than I think there's ever been. The news guys is always asking me all kinds of stuff. So, how do you like Chicago, babe? You got a good record here during your career? You find the fans as friendly here as they are in New York? That brings back memories. Spring training was really tough this year. Figured I'd play for maybe 2 more seasons. I don't want to retire until I've played for 20 years. I've slowed down a bit, but I know I still got a lot to offer. I figured that last year was a pretty good year. But nice to retire as a 20-year player and then be a manager for about another 10. Well, the word manager leads to some other thoughts. Muller Higgins' sister told some newspaper guy that having to manage me took 5 years off her brother's life. After I retire from playing, I'd like to be the manager of the Yankees. Some of them newspaper guys is pretty tough on an old guy. I'm trying as hard as I can, but they just ain't gonna praise me no matter what. You'd think they'd give a guy credit for trying at least. They treat everything you do like the trash they throw on the floor. Pretty hard to ignore it even if you wanna. People read me them quotes whether I want to hear them or not. There comes a time when a writer has to admit that all of the old comparisons are hollow. In mythology, the hero goes on forever. In baseball, the hero grows old and tired. One hates to say this, but the best thing Babe Ruth can do for baseball, for his team and for himself is to retire. Well, that's coming into his head through his ears. But is it having an effect? It's information, but is it becoming imagery that he sees as significant, that he can act upon or should act upon, or is wrong for not acting upon? That's the whole point of this exercise. There's an awful lot of things going on, things I see, things I hear, in the newspapers, on the trains, in the hotel lobbies, and on the bench. Something has always drawn my attention away from the game. And then just three images that run through his mind at some level. My wife Helen getting burned to death in a hotel fire. Chasing into the stands after a heckler and finding out he's carrying a knife. Locking horns with Colonel Rupert and looking stupid. Well, Colonel Rupert, the owner of the Yankees, his boss. More about Colonel Rupert in other areas of this novel. There's lots of things that I know I shouldn't be thinking about. I gotta keep my concentration on my hitting. That's the only thing that matters to me now. Some of them newspaper guys is pretty kind to an old guy. If I sneeze, they go and rate it like I'm some kind of god. I like hitting home runs, but it's more like I'm doing my job. Ain't like I'm king of the earth or nothing like that. I couldn't keep from hearing about it even if I wanted to. People are always reading me them quotes that the newspapers say. We no longer come to the ballpark to see the exhibition of great skills or to witness records being broken. We come to see a great heart beating proudly in the breast of a faltering warrior in an age-old contest against ever-mounting odds. Babe Ruth is still the greatest attraction at the gate. More memories. The home run race. Jimmy Fox got off to a great start. People always telling me every time he hits another home run. I thought it'd be Lou that would be the one to give me a scare this year. Well, I ain't gonna let these young guys beat me without I put up a pretty good fight. There's still a lot of baseball that's got to be played. I've always been strong in the stretch. 38 ain't so old. Somewhere in these old bones there's still the makings of a home run king. Too bad me and Lou ain't getting along. But it ain't my fault. I ain't the one that said something mean. Lou shouldn't have let his mother talk that way, saying she noticed Claire don't dress me and Helen's daughter as good as she dresses her own daughter. I always treated Lou's mother fair and square. It ain't no way for a friend of the family to talk. I can't believe that Helen died in that fire. The place she was living in was a great big sheet of flame. Said so in the newspaper. I bought a paper just to read the story. Never thought that something like that was going to happen when we broke up. Least I could do was pay for the funeral. I wish I'd have been there so I could have done something to help. Arriving at the hotel in Chicago, this is all while he's all bad, all running through his mind. A distraction for sure. Holy smokes, can you believe this crowd? Coming here to Chicago to play this game. The squeal of the brakes as a taxi pulls up at the curb. Arriving at the Edgewater Hotel and having to fight our way through the crowds on the sidewalk. Knowing that I gotta give it everything I got. Getting mad when the crowd spits on Claire. How are we going to make our way through that crowd? Somebody asks. Okay, so the game's important, but why can't them fans just leave the wives right out of it? Wonder why they can't concentrate on the game like I do and leave the sideshow out of it. Not getting sidetracked and trying to punch somebody in the crowd. They got a few police here, but I don't think it'll be enough, someone says. Arriving at the hotel in Chicago and being surprised at the size of the crowd. All them times I worked so hard on my hitting, adding 30 pounds to the swing of Shoeless Joe, pulling them higher and harder than Shoeless Joe could ever do. Learning from Shoeless Joe, all right, but standing on his shoulders as I'm learning. Getting a rise out of the Chicago bench, shouting back at him to sit back down and shut up. Charlie Root is doing the pitching. He's having a pretty interesting game. Right now he's probably thinking that it ain't much fun. Just give me something I can hit, Charlie. That's all I'm asking. Lou and me each have a homer in the game. Batting practice made them Chicago fans howl. Lou and me had a lot of fun smashing the ball into the bleachers. That'll quiet the crowd down. My first practice hit almost went over the top of the grandstand. And then again, these words at the bottom of his mind that are seeking to be sentences, paragraphs, seeking to have influence. Base coaching, aggressive batter, long ball hitter, calculations, transfer of energy, underhand toss, on plane, wide stance, thin handle, pass ball, soft stuff. Questions from reporters. So how's your health now, babe? You think it was appendicitis? You think you're in good enough shape to be able to play? All seeking to have influence on his thoughts. Spring training was really tough this year. Thinking of it as work sometimes instead of play. Taking my time walking out to the outfield instead of jogging out there like I always used to do when I was a kid. Thinking of how hot it is out here in the outfield instead of being eager to see if we can get him in a double play. Figuring that I got a couple of more good seasons in me if I can just work hard enough to get myself into playing shape. I got to be careful about my health and fitness from now on. All them things I used to do, I can't do no more. I got to be nursing the old body along from game to game. To bed at 9, up at 6, running 5 miles a day to get in shape, trying to get the waistline down to under 40 inches. I got to keep after my weight. I've been as low as 185 and as high as 256. McGovern tells me I got to stay below 240. It's a hell of a thing to always got to be thinking about your weight. Christy Walsh is sure a great guy to look after all the money and stuff for me. Christy Walsh saying, babe, your legendary status has made you the greatest money maker in the game. Me telling Christy Walsh that I know I got to get some hits. I ain't going down this easy. I ain't going to go game after game with hardly no hits. I know I ain't been hitting like I used to do, but I always been my strongest in the stretch. More media commentary, seeking to have influence on his mind. The sad fact of aging is as old as the curse laid on Adam at the time of the fall. There comes a time in every man's life when his skills erode, his timing slips, and his luster fades. That, sadly, is the case at the present time with the great Babe Ruth. 3 more images somewhere at some level of his mind. My old man hitting me with his belt when I took that money out of the till. Cobb coming into second base with his spikes in the air. There's a whole Ty Cobb minor cycle of imagery that runs through his mind, runs through the whole novel. A mixture of admiration and contempt, with maybe contempt just a little ahead of admiration. Different kind of baseball, different kind of person. Cobb coming into second base with his spikes in the air. Coming from behind in 1927 to beat Lou in the home run race. More media commentary. As his long and distinguished career draws slowly to a close, there is one beacon that still shines high above the fray, one attribute that makes him stand out from the crowd. Babe Ruth is the mightiest slugger of them all. I got a lot of aches and pains, but I ain't going to let them get me down. And that's where I'm going to stop. Now, that's page 6, pages 1 to 6 of chapter 1. Chapter 1, and most chapters are about 10 pages. There are 16 chapters in the book, so there's an awful lot of thought going on in his mind. That only touches on some of the levels of thought, some of the categories of thought that are really taking his attention away from the moment, maybe, which is the need, the desire to concentrate on that ball and hit the next big home run, but also asking him to take them into consideration as significant moments in his life, therefore significant imagery for the interpretation of his life. So it's kind of a battle between significant moments, I guess. The significant moment of standing at the plate, significant moments in the past that, if you think about them, help you to interpret your whole life and what it's worth, what it has been worth, what it could be worth in the future, whether you should make changes or carry on the same way. In a moment, I'll summarize this video. Now, as a conclusion to this particular video, I'm going to read 2 passages from my notes, and I'll tell you how you can access my notes and read them for free in a moment. Here's one passage. At the time at which the novel takes place, Babe Ruth is a man who has been exceptional exceptional in his field of endeavor to the point where he has rethought the basics of his working milieu and has revised the way others approach that field of expertise. He has come to the point where there are indications that he is declining in his powers and uses the occasion of a highly pressured present moment, a playoff game in Chicago in 1932, to re examine the images of his life and life's work in order to evaluate his accomplishment and to consider his future. His mind, at whatever level, chooses three present moments in his life: 1920, first year as a Yankee. Is he going to be the phenomenon that he's been played up as being? 1927, when he struggled, Lou was ahead of him, but he came through at the end and hit the 60 homers. In 1932, here he is standing at the plate. Is he washed up, as the people are shouting? Chicago fans, of course. One of which he is living through at the present moment, as I just said. He arranges the images that he considers pertinent in patterns that he considers to be revealing. So we're looking deep down in Babe Ruth's mind at the patterns that his mind is making. I guess the question then is his conscious mind capable of accessing those images and getting anything out of them? Here's the second passage I'll read. The text of the novel is rendered in the pre-conscious mode, so just before speech. Here are the thoughts. And it will be interesting for the reader to consider which of the levels of thought the main character is aware of, and which levels of thought remain subconscious. Babe Ruth has been thought of by some as a man of little intellectual capacity. Many lined up to study Albert Einstein's brain after his death, but no one, so far as I know, suggested studying the mind of Babe Ruth as a model of eye, brain, and coordination. Nevertheless, he must have had a mind with the complexity and the precision of a high-speed computer, or he would not have been able to hit the ball with a consistency and accuracy which far surpassed that of other human beings. That he thought about more than just hitting the ball is the premise of this novel. That he thought about more than just hitting the ball at deeper levels of his mind is the premise of his novel. That he was able to access those levels of his mind consciously is the question that the novel leaves you with. So, as far as websites go, novel is on Amazon, and I'll just hold it up here again. Out of the Park, The Cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Passfield. It's also available on my website, johnpassfield.ca, all one word, JOHNPASSFIELD. And if you go there, there are two free books. I have a planning notebook. If you go to notebooks on my website and then go down and click on the Babe Ruth icon, you'll get all the thoughts I had as I was planning, researching, structuring, and writing the novel. That's book length and it's free. Just click on it and there it is. If you go to the same website, johnpassfield.ca, go up to journals at the top, click on that, go down to the icon, you'll get my journal. As I was polishing the novel, took a month, 6 weeks, whatever, all kinds of topics occurred to me. Babe Ruth, Einstein, who I just mentioned, conscious thought, subconscious thought, baseball, sports in general, and novel writing. You know, what kind of novel do I want to write? Why do I feel this kind of novel gets closer to the way we actually live our lives? Yes, we do live our lives on the surface. We do have present moments. We do focus on what we're doing, driving a car or walking across the street. But we also think, I think, at other levels constantly. And the interaction of those various levels in the mind are what fascinates me. So there we are. Lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.